Let's give this just a minute for people to slow down filtering in. Just a reminder that this is being recorded and transcribed. All right. Good morning, everybody. Give this just a few more seconds. Then we can get started. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our PY 2026 programmatic training for municipalities on this very dreary Indianapolis morning. Hope everybody's doing well. So if you don't know, my name's Henry Lowry. I'm the vendor analyst here at IHCDA. I am the vendor analyst here. So we've got about 45 different cards today, so nothing too crazy. Lots of spaces in here, lots of breaks for questions, things like that. But I just want to encourage everybody to use the raise hand function or, put your question in the chat, and then we can get any questions you have answered. But let's go ahead and get started here. So today we're going to cover updates for this upcoming season, well, this current season, since it started 6-7 days ago. We're going to go over some common questions and common issues that I get. We're going to have some contact protocols, and then we're going to have a Q&A at the end as well.
Payment, please press 2 to schedule an appointment with a staking engineer for the installation of new electrical service.
There we go. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on. So, EAP program timeline for 2026. So this year started on the 1st of October for this program year. So that's when our online application opened to the general public at 8 a.m. On November 1st, that's when we can have in-person appointments at our agencies. And that's also the first date that utilities can receive transmittals. So that is also when applicants will first find out if they're eligible or not. So you won't hear anything else until that time. Yeah, so December 1st, start of moratorium protection, and then that runs through March 15th of next year and ends at 11:59 p.m. On April 20th, that is the end of our application period at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is, it's the same as last year, which is about a month short. And then May 4th, that's when all incomplete EAP applications must be fully processed. May 18th, it's the last day for our agencies to submit transmittals. And June 1st, we're expecting all our utility vendors to be reconciled. So that's kind of our timeline, barring any major catastrophic events. So let's get into some hot topics. So, as many of you probably know, there has been a federal government shutdown. So currently our statement is IHCDA is going to continue to our normal business operations. Our office remains open. The agency is going to continue to accept and draw down federal program draws and claims. At this time, we don't expect any disruption of services. And we're going to continue to communicate any changes. So you will be hearing from me directly in case anything comes up. So some other news. We're no longer partnering with CFS or Community Family Services as an EAP agency. Don't really know what their status is currently, but we have there are surrounding agencies in that area that are going to be picking up the outreach in those counties. So no worries there for your clients. 211 is still an active service, but they're no longer going to be accepting EAP applications telephonically. So we rolled that back a little bit. Now, I just want to remind everybody that 211 is still a great service, can still help your clients find their local agency can still connect them with other local resources. Still a great service. They just won't be accepting the telephonic applications. And then just kind of as another reminder, your first transmittals won't come until November 1st. And it's reasonable to expect that first payments won't be until mid-late December. Yeah, but that's kind of what we're anticipating right now. So. Some other big news. So we're rolling out a whole new text system. But that will be next year. This year, we're just going to pilot it in those formerly CFS territory counties. So if you have clients in Adams, Blackford, Huntington, Jay, Randolph, or Wells counties, you're going to be in our pilot program. So I'm expecting to send out some training information and onboarding information over the next week. So you'll be working in both the legacy system, the legacy EAP Connect system, and the new system, which we're calling LIT. So all other agents or all other counties and utilities are just going to use the legacy system, and we'll do a full rollout of that next summer. And then, we'll put the old system to bed and then roll out the new for everybody. So pretty excited about that. Lots of changes coming, but it's a pretty great system, pretty super simple to use. Lots of good information. I think everybody's gonna be pretty happy with it. So yeah. Okay, just a quick break here. Do we have any questions? So again, just feel free to use the chat. Feel free to put it in, use the raise hand function and then come off mute when I call on you. Okay. All right, let's get into some common questions and issues that I receive. So this is the municipality training. So let's go over some of that policy real quick. So we understand that municipality entities are under different regulation than investor-owned or privately owned or cooperatively owned providers, and that the State Board of Accounts and Regulations preclude you from recording benefits to your register before receiving the payment. So, despite that, we have to ensure that all EAP applicants are receiving equitable treatment. In lieu of the requirement in the MOA that benefits are assessed to an approved applicant's account at the time of transmittal receipt, we're asking that municipal vendors incorporate a solution that achieves the same end result without running afoul of your SBOA requirements. So, yes, so municipalities are exempt from the requirement to assess the benefits to the customer's account upon receipt of the transmittal. But what we're asking is that you ensure that the benefit amount is noted to an account at the time of the transmittal or receipt, even if it is not applied at the time. So therefore, municipal vendors must ensure that any penalties assessed to a customer account following a transmittal are only assessed against the account balance remaining in excess of the benefit. So for instance, if an applicant has a $300 balance and you receive a pledge for $200 and the applicant fails to pay the next bill, penalties may only be assessed against the $100 balance that exceeds the pending benefit. So Stacy is having an echo in the chat. If other people are having the echo, I'm sorry. Maybe drop out and come back in, Stacy. Maybe try that. I think everybody else is muted, so yeah. Okay, so just moving on real quick. So municipal vendors should find a way to note on a customer's bill that the municipality has been informed of the pending benefit and that it will be reflected upon the bill upon receipt of payment. So this should help with transparency for your customers, should result in greater peace of mind for low-income customers and reduced communication between the client and the municipal vendor and our agencies about its current status. So a best practice recommendation would be to include in the note the total amount of the benefit and the date on which the transmittal was received. So yeah. Okay. So here's one of the other major issues I get a lot of questions about. This is our 14-day hold policy. So we've had this for a couple of years now, 3 years now. So that is the vendor agree, and this is from our MOA. So the vendor agrees to temporarily suspend any disconnect action for customers once the vendor has been notified that a customer who is scheduled for disconnect has submitted an application for assistance. This suspension of disconnect action shall last for 14 days in order to give the subrecipient a reasonable time frame to assess and mitigate potential crisis situations. And then that suspension may end in less than 14 days if the applicant is determined ineligible. So this is only for outside of the moratorium timeframe. So, during the moratorium, clients are protected from shut off as soon as they submit an application. And basically what this does is it gives our agencies a little bit of time to mitigate crisis. Those agencies are required to be reaching out to utilities to help mitigate that situation. So you'll be hearing from them. You'll be contacted directly, and we just want to give clients the benefit of the doubt to get them determined and get them a benefit. So, yeah, get a lot of questions on this, but just thought we should get some clarity. So here's the other one that we get a lot of questions on. So this is out of Section 12. This was a major change in our MOA this year. The vendor agrees upon accepting an EAP benefit to maintain or reestablish service regardless of client arrearages and to take no adverse actions against client for at least 30 days. So we interpret this time frame to be through the next billing cycle. What this should do is this should alleviate a lot of back and forth between clients, utilities, and LSPs. And vendors always retain the right to refuse a benefit. We want each of you to make that decision, whether you're going to accept an EAP benefit or not. And then this is a way for us to make sure that when you do accept an EAP benefit, that it's on an active account. That is your responsibility. So this applies throughout the entire program year, and it applies at the acceptance of a transmittal. So when you sign that transmittal, you're confirming that that is an active account and that you're going to be allowing that client to use that benefit, if that makes sense. So I got a question in the chat here. It's actually for the previous card. So after the 14-day hold expires, they are then up for immediate disconnection, correct? Catherine, that's correct if the client is ineligible, yes. So everything else applies. We're just asking that 14-day hold policy just gives our agencies time to mitigate. Yeah, good question. And Catherine also asked, what if we hear no contact back from the agency? That's a great question. That can certainly happen. If you have access to our vendor portal, that will have the client status on it as well. You can also reach out to the vendor. You can also reach out to the local agency, hear from the client, that sort of thing. So yeah, we expect there to be like some different ways for you to get that information. So Brad asks, does slide 12 apply to a disconnected / final bill account? Is vendor required to reconnect if LSP cannot meet the total balance for reconnection? So the vendor is supposed to make this decision on their own. So I'm sure every vendor has their own requirements on how much is needed to reconnect service. But if they are going to accept our benefit, then yes, they need to reconnect. Good question. Okay. So credit balance. So this was a change that we made last year. So we made a reduction in the maximum credit balance for clients that is allowed. So for metered energy utilities, that's basically everybody here. Any client with a $250 or more credit will make the client ineligible for benefits. That does not make them ineligible for the program. That just makes them ineligible to receive a monetary benefit. So the moratorium is still applied whether they receive a benefit or not. Just for reference, bulk deliverable fuel utilities, it's a $500 credit. And once any client falls below that credit balance, they can return to their agency and then actually get a monetary benefit as long as there are still funds available. Okay, This is probably the number one question that I receive. And I just want to hammer this home a little bit. Anytime you are sending money back to IHCDA, just remember these are federal funds and they need to be done, and they need to include this overpayment and refund summary sheet. Okay. So this is a requirement for anytime you return funds. It's an easy and uniform way to include all the required information for returning funds. It helps our claims and fiscal staff track and account for all returned benefits, and then ensures those funds are applied to the correct grant. And then, this aims to reduce the waste of public taxpayer funds. So it also speeds up benefit transfer. So when a client moves and has their benefit set to a new utility or fuel provider, and you can always find this form on our resource page. So this is required. And I would just want to again remind you, these are federal funds. There are very strict rules around them. So anytime you are moving those funds around, we must have correct documentation. So if you can't find this on our resource page, please email me directly. I can get you a copy. I can link you to our resource page. Please, please, please include this from now on. Okay. Unallowable expenses. So EAP funds may not be applied to deposit fees, commercial or business accounts, garbage, water, or sewer bills, unsafe heating devices, service or insurance plans, repayment of fraud or theft losses, tampering charges, setting an LP tank, and any optional service or expense that is not directly related to residential energy consumption. EAP funds must provide continuing service, and utility vendors may not accept EAP funds for a closed or inactive account and apply them to an outstanding amount owed unless that account is going to be restored. So this is not an exhaustive list. If you have questions or you have some gray areas, please email me. I'd like to build this list out even more, but I can't build that list unless I know how these funds are being used. So let me know. Okay, here's another question we received. This was in our agreement, in our MOA that we just signed. So by signing the MOA, the vendor agrees to cooperate with IHCDA and our local service providers regarding the sharing of information about EAP applicants. That includes energy consumption and cost, payments, disconnect prevention and restoration of service, arrearage amounts, account status, and other data related to EAP. Clients sign a waiver every time they fill out an application. And if your legal department or your leadership needs that language, I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to have those discussions with them. The collection of this data is federally mandated. So everybody in this call has agreed to share the information with our agencies. So please do so without creating extra steps. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I can always work with you on that language. So. Okay. A lot of cards there, a lot of info. What kind of questions do we have? So Sherry asks, we have had residents waiting for a transmittal and during the process moved. Are we required to return those funds if the balance is still outstanding? So I would actually suggest, Shari, that you work with your local service provider, and that if they have moved, that you do not accept those funds. If you have, if there's a lapse or some issue where you did accept the funds, alert the agency, return the funds, and then move from there. Yeah. So it must be an active account. Good question. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about moratorium. So moratorium overview, here's the Indiana code if you would like to look it up. This was enacted in the Indiana General Assembly in 1983. It was amended in 2006, and it ensures that electric and or gas utility service is continued while eligibility is being determined for persons applying for LIHEAP assistance. It is effective from December 1st through March 15th of any year. It applies to all utility vendors who supply electricity or gas service, and it applies to vendors that are municipally owned, privately owned, or cooperatively owned. So basically everybody in this call. So there are some instances where the shutoff moratorium does allow you to shut off clients. So that could be upon the request of the client. It could be if there's a condition that is dangerous or hazardous to life, physical safety, or property by a court order from the IURC or any other public authority. If there's fraudulent or unauthorized use detected, and that you have reasonable grounds to believe the customer is responsible for that. If the utility's regulating or measuring equipment has been tampered with and the utility has reasonable grounds to believe the client is responsible. I would say in these kind of situations during the season, if you're going to shut off a client that is protected by moratorium, I would preemptively loop us in. Let us know what is going on. Let the agency know what's going on. This can, save a lot of headache later. So if we know what's happening. Okay. So utility vendors and agencies need to have good communication to foster productive partnerships in order to comply effectively with moratorium requirements. Our agencies should be contacting the vendor to extend moratorium protection prior to eligibility determination. However, utility vendors are far more likely to hear from the client themselves. Clients should be given moratorium protection if they tell the vendor that an application has been submitted. We ask that you trust and then verify. You can use our vendor portal to check a client status or contact the agency directly if they have not contacted you. Our agencies have 14 business days to complete application processing for in-person appointments and 55 calendar days to complete application processing for other application methods. So our agencies should be notifying vendors when EAP utility has been determined so that a pledge can be entered or moratorium protection can be terminated if they are deemed ineligible. Vendors may contact the LSP to inquire about the status of an application that has been placed under moratorium protection while the eligibility was being determined, especially if more than 10 days have elapsed since the projected determination date. Some vendors extend protection at the beginning of the EAP season. That is not required by law, but we understand that, and we appreciate that some vendors will extend that compassion. So, yeah. Okay, just went through the moratorium pretty quick. Got any questions? All right. Okay, let's talk about our transmittal process. So our transmittals are the official record of benefit for whenever a client has been approved. So anytime there's discrepancies between pledges received from your agency contact and the amount on the transmittal amount is considered the correct amount. Transmittals are not valid for payment until they have been signed by both the agency and the utility vendor. And any changes made to the transmittal need to be made prior to the signature and execution of it. So all of our agencies have been instructed to ensure that transmittals are generated and sent on at least a weekly basis. So it is your responsibility to review the transmittal fully before signing it. Your review should include that your client is your client. Ensure that the name, service address, and account number is correct. Ensure that account is currently active and is not scheduled for disconnect at the customer's request. If there are any errors or accounts that need to be removed, it's your responsibility to mark them. And if it's electronic, it does a lot of that on its own. And then do that before signing and returning the transmittal report to our agency. Utilities are required to return transmittals within 7 days, and pledges must be applied at the time of transmittal. Well, not for municipalities. So, yeah, 7 days. I would hope it'd be going a little quicker. So LSPs may award client additional funds at any time or submit negative transmittals accompanied by an overpayment remittance if there's been an error. So when a vendor receives a negative transmittal, they're to follow the same transmittal process. After returning the signed negative transmittal to the agency, the vendor also signs the overpayment remittance, and then that is to be sent with the check to IHCDA so that those funds can be reinvested in the program. So if that ever occurs, utility vendors are justified to pass any charges on to the customer after returning funds. So overpayments can occur because an applicant was accidentally awarded more funds than they were eligible for, or they were approved for benefits when they were in fact not eligible. So any delinquency caused by the removal of an overpayment from the customer's account becomes the customer's responsibility to pay. So again, in order to keep everything on time and moving, we ask that all utility vendors return signed transmittals within 1 week of receipt or sooner. You will receive claim notification emails when payments are coming through. So that payment notification comes from reset@ihcda.in.gov. The information included on those is only the transmittal numbers. So you use that with your records to apply payments and reconcile your claims. So please remember that no LIHEAP funds are ever to be released back to the customer. All unused EAP funds must be returned to IHCDA within 60 days of an account closing. So yeah. If you're not receiving those reset@ihcda.in.gov emails, please let me know. I can always double check. Make sure you whitelist it in your junk emails, things like that. Make sure it's coming through. But let me know if you're having issues. I can always update contacts and make sure people are getting the right information they need. Yeah. Any questions? Okay. Talk about a little bit about our vendor portal. So our vendor portal allows all transmittals to be sent, edited, signed, returned, and monitored all online. You will receive notification emails when one is ready. We have training guides available. You can always email the vendor's inbox or email me directly if you would like access or are having issues. And just FYI, this is the final year for this program, for this tech system. So we are, like I said earlier, we're moving to this new system. So, but if you would like access to this legacy system for the rest of the season, please let me know. There's lots of benefits to doing all of this online. So, yeah, let me know. So we have a couple questions in the chat. So Linda asks, we send the transmittals back immediately, but it takes several days to receive the payments, and they may send payment back for 15 transmittals at one time. Is there any way those can be spaced out? Yeah, so usually so once the transmittal gets sent back to an agency, I believe they have a couple of days to submit that for payment, assuming they have the funding. So assuming there's been no funding delays, I believe IHCDA can take up to 28 days to send their payments. I think our average is a lot quicker than that. But yeah, my guess is if you're receiving a pile of transmittals, it was probably because there was funding delays. But yeah, we're working on spacing those out and making sure that they're paid quickly. So that's the best I can promise right now. So Patty says, can we go back to page 28? I have a question about an active customer. Sure can. Patty, if you would like to come off. Oh, here we go. So we have a customer that keeps receiving EAP and she now has $1,000 credit. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, if that client is going to be up for receiving a benefit this year, so for example, in November, That is something you need to communicate to the agency, and that is not a benefit that you would accept. So you would decline it on the transmittal, put in your reasoning that that they're over the credit. The agency and or you can communicate to that client that they have too high of a credit, and then once they spend that credit down, they can receive the benefit if they get below that 250. So does that pretty well cover it? Cool. All right. That covers it. Micah asks, Henry, could you please clarify Brad's question regarding slide 12? Uh, just knowing per the manual that we cannot pay on final bills or closed accounts. Um, yeah, so Brad was asking about applying funds to disconnected or final bill accounts. Yeah, so just to clarify, the only time you can accept a benefit on a closing or final bill account is if that account is being reopened. That's the only kicker. So if they're not being reopened, then you cannot accept that account, or you cannot accept that benefit. I hope that clarifies it. Uh, Chat is moving. All right. Julie says, I have two customers that have applied and do so annually, but has been disconnected. It says no payments for disconnected accounts. Does LSP verify applications? Julia, I'm not exactly certain of your question. If they're disconnected, they can still get a benefit if that benefit turns them back on. That is your, so I'm not really sure what you mean by verify applications. Yeah, but if you can clarify that a little bit in the chat, then I'm happy to answer that. Uh, Brad asked, there's a vendor that's having a hard issue. Oh, are the slides and recording going out to vendors this week? Yes, my plan is to send out the slide deck and the video recording at the end of this week, barring anything else coming up major. So if not, early next week. Okay, Stacy asks, as far as portable devices, we have customers that state to us that they only use space heaters. If this is the case, how do we prove slash justify rejecting their transmittal? Stacy, that's a great question. I cannot answer that off the cuff. Email me, please, and then let me look into that. I would love to answer that question. I'd love to know that answer off the top of my head. Thank you. Good questions. Cool. Okay, I'm going to move on. Please keep putting questions in the chat if you have them. Stacy, please email me that question. Right. So let's talk about our vendor guide and some other resources real quick. So we have vendor guide. All of our trainings and PowerPoints and videos are going online. That is, if you just Google IHCDA EAP vendor page, that'll come up. If you can't find it, shoot me a message. I'll get you the link. Um, we have a really great vendor guide that we revamped last summer. It's really great if you're new to the program or if you hire somebody or somebody on your team, has a lot of questions. It's really laid out very nicely. Very good info in there. So very good resource. And you can check that website for lots of updates and things going on. So yeah. Okay. Let's talk about vendor monitoring and performance measures. So what is vendor monitoring? So the purpose of vendor monitoring is to ensure compliance with LIHEAP, program by the utility vendor. It's also an opportunity to improve processes and let us know where areas of confusion or additional assistance is needed. Vendor monitoring is a federally mandated component of the LIHEAP statute and is indicated in our MOA. All vendors that participate in the state of Indiana's LIHEAP are subject to vendor monitoring, and it's conducted as a desktop review by the vendor analyst, which is me. So this is kind of the quick process. So vendors will receive a letter. It's a 30-day process, and it notifies of you when the session begins. Next, you're required to complete our energy utility supplier survey, and then complete and submit all the documentation that we provide. And then we spend about 30 days going over that information and then send you a review afterwards. So pretty straightforward. So vendor best practices. So we would like you all to create written processes to promote consistency and program integrity. We want you to perform internal quality assurance audits on EAP customer accounts. All utility vendors should create a system to ensure that unallowable expenses are not being paid using EAP funds. And vendors should create a 3-year record retention and destruction policy for all EAP documentation, including electronic documentation. So let me repeat that. 3-year record retention policy. Please don't print anything out. I don't think that's necessary, but please keep all your electronic documentation as well. All of that is subject to being monitored by the feds, not just us. So please keep everything within 3 years. We ask that you strive to meet all of our reporting deadlines. This allows us in turn to fulfill our own federal reporting requirements and make effective program changes. Another best practice we suggest is actually putting energy assistance information on your website. If a client is having issues paying their bills, obviously they're probably first going to go to your website or give you a call. If you have information on there, you can always link to our page. That page can, help that client find their agency and get the assistance they need. So, performance measures. Performance measures is mandated also by the LIHEAP statute. So every year we ask several vendors to submit performance measures data. This includes providing annual energy usage and cost for all clients who have received LIHEAP benefits, and then we cross-reference that data with our annual income calculations. So the purpose of performance measures data is to demonstrate a reduction of energy burden and to assist IHCDA in crafting policy. So, yeah. Okay. We had a little bit of some questions in the chat here. Yeah, so we just had some comments on Stacy's question. Okay, yep. Thanks, Brad. Okay, moving on here. So who should we be contacting? Okay. So for our local service providers, our agencies, the questions about specific clients or households, questions about benefits, questions about submissions of transmittals, confirming application status, notification of suspected customer meter tampering or unauthorized use. Those questions should go to your agencies. Questions that go to us, questions about payments that you're unable to answer after reviewing your transmittals and claim approval emails, questions about moratorium or MOA terms, general issues you're having with your local service providers, following up on refunds or energy benefit transfers, suspicion of fraud or misconduct at the LSP level. Questions about clients. So all referrals for LIHEAP need to go to their agency or sending them to 211 to help them find that. So 211 still a great resource, just not taking the applications online or applications over the phone anymore. Great resource for finding everything they need. So yeah, so please never refer clients to IHCDA directly. That just causes a lot of headaches. It sends them into a circle, and that's pretty frustrating for clients who are in need. So again, please never refer them directly to us. But we now have a dedicated vendor inbox for all your vendor needs. And but you still may be hearing from the EAP at ihcda.in.gov inbox as well. I would say just kind of moving forward, if you have any doubt, any questions, things like that, just please loop us in, especially if you're having problems with your agencies. Yeah. So this is my second to last card here. So if you guys have questions, this is the time for it. I'll take a second here. Yeah. Cool. Well, like I said, I can still sit here and take questions if they pop up over the next like few minutes. But we're happy to kind of give you some time back if there are no others. But so I just want to take a second. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you all for the hard work you're doing for Hoosiers, and for your clients. I know they appreciate it. We appreciate it. If you have questions or concerns, please shoot me a message. Let me help. That's kind of my entire job. So happy to help you figure things out. So on the cards, we'll have links to our resource page. We'll have links to our vendor portal login. But yeah, happy to take questions. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for attending. Hi, Tammy. Good question. Um, I believe there are certain, yeah, I believe they can be used for certain tax and penalties. Um, if you want to shoot me a message, then we can go over those exact rules. I don't remember them exactly off the top of my head. I'd love to give you a real in-depth answer to that. Thank you. Good question. Heather says, I want to clarify that if someone has applied for EAP, we can't disconnect for 14 days. And after that point, we need to find out if they were accepted or declined. Yeah. So basically, Heather, let's talk about, so that policy itself is for outside of the moratorium timeframe. So the general rule is that during moratorium is that if a client applies, they are protected from shut off at the moment of their application through their eligibility determination, positive or negative. So outside of the moratorium timeframe, what we're just asking is that if you have a client that has a shutoff notice, for example, they apply for EAP, there's no way for you to know that. But because that client has a shutoff notice, they're what is considered a crisis client, which means that they get an elevated status to get their application reviewed. So either you'll be hearing from the client or you'll be hearing from the agency that they've applied. All we're doing is we're asking that you suspend that shut off for 14 days, up to 14 days, while the client and while our agencies quickly determine eligibility and then mitigate that crisis situation. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. It's only for outside the moratorium. Um, I hope that helps. Julia asks if a customer has a large balance and was disconnected in May, if I'm understanding, they can still get assistance as long as they pay the difference to get service turned back on. Julia, yeah, good question. So yeah, that is absolutely right. That is up for your utility to decide what is an appropriate amount for that client to pay back. In the past, our agencies have spent a lot of time kind of negotiating, and we basically kind of encourage them not to do that. So if you are going to accept our benefit, you need to turn the client on. If you're not going to accept the benefit, then you can leave that client off. That is your decision to make. So if you want our funds, they have to be on an active service. Sherry said, Henry, I checked the IARA records retention schedule, and for poor relief claims are a 10-year retention, and after an audit has been done by SBOA, would this not supersede 3 years retention? Um, yeah, I mean, look, if they're requiring you to keep records for 10 years, that's fine. Um, yes, I think that would supersede our requirement. But the LIHEAP statute requires just 3 years for our documentation. So that's all. I hope that makes sense. Good questions, all. Yep. Feel free to shoot me an email, and if there are any others that come up as you guys all drop out. So thank you all. Cool. Okay. Thanks, everybody.